We'll go to the UK shortly and have a chat to our dear friend Mark Dolan. In the meantime, two great blokes with plenty to say and are very free to do so. Ed Kavanagh is the McKell Institute's CEO. He's in Adelaide. Sean Bell, well, even though he's part of the Australian Federal Parliament, being a One Nation senator means no leash, no restrictor plate. He can fire up in any way that he likes. That's the way that we love it. Thank you, lads. I appreciate seeing you tonight. So, Newspoll is out. It pretty much tells us what we've seen before, which is extraordinarily, again, One Nation more popular than the Greens coalition at 24, Labor at 36. But the headline is that Andrew Hastie firms as the alternative to Susan Lee. Now, that is because, total speaking, who should be the Liberal leader? Susan Lee is at 21%, Hastie is at 15%, Ted O'Brien, Deputy, is at 3%, Taylor is at 9%, Wilson is at 6%. 46% of Australian voters have no idea whom the Liberal Party leader should be. Interestingly, that includes 51% of Labor voters, 31% of Coalition voters, 56% of Green voters, and 43% of Pauline Hanson's One Nation voters. So, Sean, the conch is yours. When almost half of all people have no idea whom the leader of the Liberal Party is, and its primary is now down to basically a quarter of the vote, even when, a third of coalition people can't pick which way they're going to go, it does suggest the end of the year is not a fun place to be for them.
Paul, I think you're right. I think that's a little lump of coal in the Christmas stocking for the Liberal Party there. And it was interesting reading through those numbers because what I was hoping I'd see is Senator Hanson's name somewhere on there, because I suspect if that included her in the list, I think it'd be very clear who the preferred opposition leader would be. And I think that's because, the Australians have seen how clearly Senator Hanson and One Nation have fought on these issues that the Liberal Party has just dropped the ball on. We've led the way on net zero, we've led the way on mass immigration, and we're going to continue to lead the way. And I think as long as we do, the Liberal Party are going to be in all sorts of trouble.
Now, I know some people don't like when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, right? If you look at two-party preferred, at the federal election, which was the thumper, 55-45, it is now 58-42. So the right side of Australian politics has lost 3%, and the left side of Australian politics, I know you'll say centre, but for my purposes, the left of Australian politics has gone up by 3%. What does that tell you, Ed?
Well, I think that was really the headline of this poll. I know the Hastie name drop really at the top of that article was the story, but the fact is that at the end of this, go back a year ago. Imagine if a year ago, when Labor were looking like they were on the ropes, you were going to say they were going into this Christmas with the Newspoll at 58-42. I think what Sean just said is that, One Nation's been leading the way on net zero and some of these other issues. What they've been leading the right of Australian politics into, though, is into increasing obscurity and increasing unpopularity. And that's what we're seeing out in these numbers. I don't think you can deny that when you look at just that raw two-party preferred figure.
Sean, do you think that One Nation is heading the right of Australia up the garden path, as Ed suggests?
I think what's going to happen is, so long as we focus on those bread and butter cost of living issues and we go hard against the Labor government, then eventually those numbers and this honeymoon that the Albanese government's been experiencing will start to end. It has been the failure of the Liberal Party to hold the Albanese government to account that's the cause of this. So One Nation has been fighting hard on these issues, these cost of living issues. We've won the argument. The Liberals have seen this. So they've decided to drop that net zero slogan because they see how badly on the nose it is. And I think the Labor Party is getting a little bit nervous.
Well, interesting to note that, of course, One Nation 6% thereabout nationally, if it's now sitting at 15, 16, 17, depending on the poll that you're at. Of course, huge number of extra people would be joining you in the Senate, and that, of course, is the long-term play. Fascinating to see. All right, Ed. Julia Gillard's given a speech about how Parliament, a little bit too masculine with all of its yelling and shouting and carrying on, which, of course, means that she never wants anyone to ever show the misogyny speech ever again. Because raised voices is not good in Australian Parliament unless, of course, it's hers in defence of Peter Slipper. That's right. Remember, we remember on this show. She says, among other things, a way of getting rid of the rah-rah from Parliament is that rather than, the government sits on one side, the opposition sits on the other, that you kind of mix everything up. Quote, I've advocated in the past to try and randomise the seating in Parliament. Seats are allocated on one side, the opposition, the opposite, and some independents in the middle. But if you're all sitting next to each other, like Tories next to Tories, or Liberals in this case, or Labor or Lib Dems, then, well, you're far less likely to be turning and going, yah, 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 and across the chamber. Do you think this is the necessary changes that we need to make Parliament less yelly? But I sort of thought that, yes, while yelling could be considered a little bit sort of in the modern world to be a little bit too masculine, the reality is that the contest of ideas should evoke passion, regardless of whether you are male, female, they, them, Liberal, Labor or Tiffany Teal. Ed, what do you think?
Well, look, my general view on this is that, look, people are sick about a lot of things when it comes to politicians. You were showing these sort of social media gimmicky clips before. I think people are sick of some of that stuff. I think they're sick of sound bites on TV news programs. I think heated parliamentary rhetoric and parliamentary debate is actually something that people probably aren't as sick of as some of those other features. I think it is an important part of the system having that degree of adversarialism. Look, Sean's in there. He'll be able to speak to this more and what that is actually like when you're on the ground. But I'm not sure if it actually fundamentally ruptures the relationships across party lines as well either. People kind of accept that as just part of the fabric of parliamentary debate. I do think there is an issue, though, with Dorothy Dix's and some of the other ways that question time run that could be reformed to just make it much better and much more productive for the average viewer.
I also like about the British system that basically it's the Prime Minister who's taken them from everywhere, taking them from the backbench, taking them from... And they're all essentially difficult questions. It's not just like, what are the alternative policies? And then, insert 3 minutes of boredom. Sean, again, when you're in the Senate chamber, people have always told me, who've had the honour of serving upstairs or downstairs, that it's a lot louder than you see on television. And because the microphone is only on you, the speaker, some of the heckles are very audible, but the microphone doesn't pick them up. Is that true?
Paul, I think when you're down there on the floor, it is a very robust place, but that's all part of it. And I think Australians want to see their politicians engage in rough debates. And I think it was very interesting to see Julia Gillard come out and bring this up because, she gave as good as she got, and fiercely so. So I actually think this probably speaks to a new generation of sort of young Labor progressive politicians who might have a little bit of a glass jaw. And I also think it's a sort of call from the former Prime Minister to try and... This is a call for less transparency. They don't want... That is the last thing a Labor government wants, is for people to be arguing robustly against their policies. So, look, I've been down there a few times now and I'm not at all bothered by it. And so I hope that it continues. I don't want to see any of these changes. I think Australians want to see our politicians focused on, actually changing real politics and not about where people are sitting in Parliament.
Now, by the way, everyone needs to know that by this time tomorrow night, or about this time tomorrow night, we should have a trailer for the Pauline Hanson movie, which is coming out on Australia Day. It's going to be very exciting and it's going to ruffle all the right feathers, okay? So if somehow you can get the text of a trailer into Hansard, good luck to you, Sean. It'll be fun to see in the next few days. All right. Ed, something nothing to do with politics. Black Friday. Now, of course, this is the first day of the pre-Christmas sales, which is supposed to happen the day after Thanksgiving, which is supposed to be one day, the last Friday in November. But Black Friday, Cyber Monday, seems to go for a whole lot longer than a day. Are you the type of person who goes nuts over this stuff? Are you jumping on the 12.5% off stuff, or you, like me, are desperately disappointed that 10 minutes before midnight on Christmas Eve, they don't deliver?
Look, I would, if my wife is watching this, she'll be shocked at me having any authoritative opinion on Black Friday or on sales of anything like this going into the Christmas period. I got to confess, I'm one of those folks that literally, like the day before Christmas, buys all my presents, cops all of the extra cost of that. So in terms of this particular shift we're seeing, I mean, it's a bit of an Americanization of our November period. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but look, it's part of the fabric now, and we're seeing consumers really do respond to it.
That's it. If people are into Halloween, and again, my kids were this year, so I've given over to it. Again, if it's legit bargains, awesome. If it's just sort of 20% off the 21% that we put it up by the night before, which I think is illegal, but still not a great idea. All right, Sean, give me a bold prediction for the week ahead, right? What is definitely happening this time, well, over the next 7 days?
Paul, you stole my scoop. I was actually going to make a bold prediction that on Tuesday, that One Nation trailer that they're going to drop is going to break the internet.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a day of tears. You'll have them crying with laughter, the people with a sense of humour, and the ones without a sense of humour will just be crying, Paul. So I'd say people keep their eyes focused on that because that is going to be a big one.
All right, Ed, super fast, mate. Prediction.
I don't think you can get through the week as the opposition leader without there being a great deal of speculation and intention on what she's actually going to do around the leadership. Going into summer, going into early next year, you're going to see a South Australian election where the Liberals get trounced. It's a really tough time for the opposition leader with this much leadership speculation. You're going to need to bring that to a head at some point, and I suspect we might see something of that nature this week.
Yeah, surprise empty chair or all the rest of it, or people, we'll all see and all find out together. Thank you, mate. Do appreciate it. All the best, boys. We'll see you. And again, that One Nation trailer, the second we can, well, I'm going to show it to